What is going on, guys? Happy Friday. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down this 9-game NBA slate we have here on DraftKings for Friday night. So if you're new to the channel, please hit that like button as it does really help out my channel. Do greatly appreciate it. I'll be talking through my favorite core plays, some pivot plays, talking through the injury news, kind of how that affects this slate, and going over my favorite core plays as of right now. Obviously, with injury news, it does change, so make sure to stay updated with me on Twitter at HartDFS. Check out my free Patreon where I do slate write-ups. And yeah, I'll see you guys in this slate breakdown. Just a little recap of yesterday. This was from the Bulls game that started at like 3 o'clock versus Detroit. I got absolutely hooked on that Vucevic over there at points. I think he had 14 in the first half and just did nothing that second half. So that was annoying. Would have been a nice 6-6 slip there. But, of course, we go 5 of 6. Vuce hooks me there. And then moving on to the night or the main slate. The core plays were Harden, Wiggins, Reed, and Ayton. Once again, for the third straight day, the core plays are actually pretty solid. Harden had 52, Wiggins had 40, Reed, huge foul trouble. I've never seen foul trouble like that before. He had 4 first half minutes, if you guys weren't watching, with 3 fouls. That was wild, but he still managed to get 22, so it really didn't kill your lineups, even though he was super chalky. And then Ayton, very low owned, I think 8%, and he went off for 50. So once again, core plays were very solid, but I just keep getting screwed on my pivot plays, my other plays in my lineup, and it's just super frustrating. But to, kind of end the night on a nice note, DeAndre Ayton and James Harden both hit the over there on the YouTube prize pick play, so that's great. Looking to continue that. I don't know if I'll have a prize pick play video out tonight, maybe, or for tonight's slate, maybe I will. We'll have to see, but expect one for tomorrow for either NFL or the NBA. So yeah, nice to hit the 2 out of 2 there on the prize pick plays from the YouTube video. Nice little clean sweep. So we'll look to continue that into the next video whenever that may come out. Now, moving on to this 9-game slate. As I mentioned in the intro, there is some news we kind of have to wait for in terms of the slate, like Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell. Who else we got here? Klay Thompson, back-to-back, Jamal Murray, Franz Wagner. So there is some decently kind of slate changing news on this slate here. So moving on to this first game of the slate, we got the Pelicans versus Orlando. The big news here is going to be Najee Marshall and Herb Jones. If they're in, it's kind of the same breakdown for this team that it has been for the past week or two. CJ looks like a nice contrarian spin-up play at the 8,700. Price is coming down just because he hasn't been the best the past 4 games, but we know he has a very solid upside. So I don't mind him here in this matchup versus Orlando. He should be able to get his. J-Val, it's just more of a minutes thing. If he's going to get around 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more, he's always very solid, especially at that price tag. But that's just the question mark. Even with how big Orlando is, J-Val still could get limited minutes somehow, just either due to foul trouble or just being bad. But yeah, he looks decent. Both those two at the top, I really like them. And then if they're both in, not a lot of interest for me, but if they're both out, I would assume, Trey Murphy would look a little bit better there as a value play. Jose Alvarado would look decent as well. He should see closer to 30 minutes. He'd probably start alongside CJ. And then Dyson Daniels would start once again. He's been playing very solid minutes the past few games. Obviously, he's not involved really offensively at all. He's just more of a stat stuffer. So at 3,700, I do think he'd be a very solid value play. Would probably see a floor of 30 minutes, close to that. So I'd like him a good amount. And then off the bench, we could look to guys like Larry Nance, Hernan Gomez, maybe Jackson Hayes gets some minutes because it's a big team, Devontae Graham. So it's kind of nice that this is the first game of the slate, so we'll get that news ahead. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on this game real fast, or for tonight. Moving on to Orlando. Paolo is at a decent price. Actually, I do have a good amount of interest in Paolo here at this price tag. Been very quiet recently. 2 games, about 40 fantasy points. But really before that and after that, hasn't really been kind of, what you expect from Paolo in terms of fantasy output. So I do have a good amount of interest in here in a decent spot versus the Pelicans. The big news is obviously Franz Wagner. If he's out, it does, give a bump to a guy like Paolo, Wendell, kind of the whole team just in terms of fantasy output. Franz is this guy who will score, he'll rebound, he'll assist. So it does make it so, that usage has to go to some other people. These guys will soak it up. The Boncheros, Wendell, Fultz, Anthony, even Bol, he may start here. Mo Wagner, I don't think I'd get to really anyone off the bench. They're just not seeing enough minutes, even if Franz is out. Maybe you could take a shot on a guy like Gary Harris. But right now, it's just going to be kind of Bonchero, Wendell, and Fultz for me. Maybe Cole Anthony as well. I think they're all worth a shot in GPP setting. If Franz is in, they're more just riskier plays. If Franz is out, I do have a good amount of interest in some of these Orlando pieces. Moving on to Golden State in Cleveland. Obviously with Steph, they're coming off a back-to-back, so it'll be interesting to see if Thompson plays, which he really hasn't played in back-to-backs all season. 2, if Steph plays, I could see it being a spot where they're going to give him rest just because of his shoulder. They played a huge game last night against the Celtics. It went into overtime, so I wouldn't be surprised if Steph, Clay, and Green end up getting ruled out, maybe even Wiggins. So it could be a game where we could get Poole, who would look great at 7,900, leading the team versus Cleveland. Obviously not the best spot. I wouldn't say he'd be a must play. He'd be a very solid play here if those guys get ruled out. But if it's just Clay, then, Steph would be a solid spin-up play in a tough matchup. Poole would look decent. Draymond Green has been decent recently. Wiggins is there. So a little bit of interest. I really just kind of want to wait for that news to kind of make any assumptions there. Moving on to Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell is kind of the big news. If he's in, I really only prefer getting to a guy like Jared Allen. Bigs have been feasting against Golden State, so he would look great here. If Donovan Mitchell is out, then once again Garland looks fantastic. Karis LeVert would look great there at 5,400. He'd get into the starting lineup. He'd be playing huge minutes. You could take a shot on a guy like Kevin Love off the bench. Minutes have been great recently, but we know if he gets the minutes, 15 to 20, he could absolutely smash in that spot. So always worth a dart throw. Ricky Rubio is out, so that would just be a little bit more minutes for a guy like maybe Raul and Nato, but yeah, not a lot I like besides kind of the main starters here, with good amount of interest in Jared Allen just because it's a decent price tag. We know he has a huge ceiling, especially in this matchup versus Golden State, who've been getting up a ton of points to centers. Moving on to Miami and Dallas. Bam looks very solid here. No Christian Wood. Bam should be able to feast against whether it's Dwight Powell or what is it? What's Slender Man's name? JaVale McGee. Bam should have his way. Solid price tag. I don't love it because it's a pretty slow-paced game, but Bam has been doing good recently. We know he's very solid upside, so I do like Bam a good amount here. Just hope he gets involved, because it could also be one of those games where he just doesn't get involved, because he does that at times, but he's been good recently, so I like buying into his hot streak here. Jimmy, just more of a contrarian play there. Don't really have interest in him. Good amount of interest in Tyler Hero. Got absolutely screwed that last game. Played him 24 minutes, 33 fantasy points at halftime. Really did nothing in this. I think he had 2 fantasy points in the second half. And yeah, they blew him out by 30, so he didn't have to play. And he played half his shift in the third quarter, didn't play any in the fourth. So that's the stuff I'm talking about. I could rant. I'm just not going to rant. I'm going to keep it out. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. That's super annoying. But yeah, I do have a good amount of interest in Tyler Hero. Do have a good amount of interest in Bam tonight. So I'll throw him in there as kind of my higher interest plays as of right now. Moving on to the rest of the team. Not a ton that really stands out. As I said, Jimmy, just more of a contrarian play. Victor with Kyle Lowry back, he should see, mid-20s minutes. You could go to him. Don't feel great about that. Kyle Lowry, same thing. Like, minutes, mid-20s. Sure, he's decently productive, but I think it's, I'd rather go up to the 2 main guys, Bam and Tyler. And that's really it. There's not a lot of value on this team that I really like. Moving on to Dallas, it's just Luka. The few times I've played him this season, it's coming in his worst games. Like that last game, and he absolutely screwed me on prize picks as well in the game before that. So he's been annoying. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes for 200 fantasy points tonight, because I'm probably not going to play him. Not the best matchup here, pretty slow pace, especially with Christian Wood out. It's going to be heavily reliant on him, Dinwiddie, and Tim Hardaway Jr. to carry this team. Miami's a team that likes to zone, run weird defenses. They could really try to limit Luka in the spot. So I don't think I'm going to get to him. But yeah, it's not a bad spot for Luka, I guess. Dinwiddie, Hardaway Jr. going to be the second and third options on this team. Hardaway Jr. should be back, so I think he'd be my favorite play at that price tag, even though he's very, very score independent. Otherwise, not a lot of interest I'd like besides, we could dip down to DFS as a value play. Sure, we could get to JaVale McGee or, where'd he go? Dwight Powell as value plays. They're the flatmen. They're going to have to play a good amount. So I think those two are looking like decent value plays. If I had to get to one, it'd probably be JaVale McGee, but his minutes are a little bit riskier compared to a Dwight Powell. But I think JaVale McGee is just a way better point per minute guy. So we have to keep an eye out on the starting news there. Moving on to the Knicks and Atlanta. Great spot here for the Knicks. Decent amount of interest. The prices have come down a tad, like $102 each. I think my favorite of the three would be RJ just because of the price tag, but they all look great. Brunson and Randall have been, the better of the three recently just because, RJ's been out for a few weeks, but good amount of interest in these New York Knicks guys. In terms of value, Mitchell Robinson is out, so Isaiah Hartenstein should start. Another one of those guys that is a very solid point per minute guy. Minutes aren't always secure or safe with him, but a nice pivot play off of him, if you don't want to go there, would be Jericho Sims, 3,000. Another one of those high energy guys. He's not going to be involved too much offensively. Very, very foul prone, but he does have a decent amount of ceiling. If you could get, one of those double doubles, he's a good rebounder, but it just comes down to him staying out of the foul trouble. But yeah, good amount of interest in that Knicks side. Moving on to Atlanta. Trae Young, really the only interest for me on this team. Sure, you can get to DeJounte Murray. The price has been very solid. He's been very great recently, but I don't know. I just can't trust him shooting like 60, 70% the past few games. I'd rather get to Trae here if he plays. Obviously, if Trae's out, we can look to DeJounte to lead the team. Guys like Collins, Hunter, they look more viable. Bogdan if he does play. So a little bit of interest in this team, especially if there's some injury news here. Moving on to the Clippers and San Antonio. Not the best game environment here. Obviously, could be a little bit blowout risk. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are back. So in terms of just interest in this team, it's really just going to be Kawhi and Paul George for me, with the edge to Paul George just because he's a little bit cheaper. Does have a very similar ceiling, if not a little bit better, just because he does have, triple-double-esque, upside there. And then in terms of like other plays, I'd really only look to Zubac, 5'5". Sure, you could get to Terrence Mann. He will start, but it's really going to be Zubac for me just because he has upside in random games. But otherwise, it's just going to be the main two for me. No need to get to anyone else on this side. Moving on to the Spurs side. Not a lot of interest I have here. Maybe Portal, just because he's a very solid point per minute guy, but not the best spot here. Blowout risk. These guys are priced about right. So, you could take a shot on Jay Rich. He's decent. McDermott, pretty cheap here. You should see about 20-ish minutes. He could get you there if he's going to get 25 fantasy points, but yeah, not a lot of interest in this Spurs side. Moving on to Indiana and Denver, another game that has huge blowout risk. Obviously, Miles Turner at 7-1. He's a solid play. He was very popular against OKC. He ended up busting, ruining a lot of people's lineup. So don't mind here. It's a bounce back spot against Denver. Obviously, there's huge risk with him being in foul trouble, trying to guard Jokic. But if he stays out of foul trouble, we know he has massive upside, especially if he's hitting the shots. So I have a good amount of interest in Turner. Healed, kind of priced about right. Sure, you can get to him. I'd rather take a shot on Turner or one of the guards. TJ McConnell finally priced up 5'8". I mean, if he ends up being like 15, 20, 25% owned on this huge slate at 5'8", and he actually gets there, it's just going to be the dumbest thing ever. But yeah, at that price tag, don't think there's a need to get to him. He's going to come off the bench. He will see mid-20s minutes. Maybe if it's a close game, he'll see 30 if he's doing well. He's been very solid point per minute guy, but at that price tag in this matchup, just don't think I can do it. I'd rather get to a guy, Matherin's there, but I'd rather get to Andrew Nembhard. Seen about mid-20s minutes. Could get into the 30s if it's a close game. There is blowout risk, but he should play those blowout minutes. So yeah, I have a good amount of interest in him. As you can see, very solid upside. That last game was a blowout, 27 minutes, but still got you there 40 fantasy points. And he was very low owned. I think he was only like 8%. So do have a good amount of interest in Nembhard there at 5'3". Rest of the team just kind of there. Like, sure, you can take a shot on Isaiah Jackson if you think Miles Turner gets in foul trouble, but at the same time, they do have a good amount of bigs. Like, they can throw in James Johnson, O'Shea. This is a lot of people. Jalen Smith off the bench, so not a lot of interest in the front court, just more of the guards there for me for Indiana. Moving on to Denver. I obviously love Jokic. The price is very solid here. It's just you got to hope this game stays close, that there's not a blowout. He's been great recently. What is it? 3 triple-doubles in a row? Almost 4. So, yeah, he's been fantastic. Just hope this game stays close to be able to spend up for him. I'm assuming he's going to be very popular, even if that blowout risk. But, yeah, love Jokic. Jamal Murray should be good to go. It looks like he's probable. Don't mind him there at 6'6" as like a pivot play off Chalky Jokic. I do have a good amount of interest in Aaron Gordon. The price is coming down. Hasn't been good. Bad game versus Minnesota. It's just the matchup thing. Who's going to guard him in Indiana? Jalen Smith? No. If they start Naismith, he's not going to be able to guard Aaron Gordon. That's a huge mismatch. even, Gordon going into Miles Turner, that's a very solid matchup for Aaron Gordon. So you have a good amount of interest in Aaron Gordon, especially if you want a piece from this game and moving off, like pivoting off of chalky Jokic. Aaron Gordon is that guy. We know he's very, very high upside, mid 40s, could get you 50 plus as well if he's doing really, really well. So do like Aaron Gordon a good amount here at that price tag. Rest of the team just kind of there for me. No real standouts. Sure, you could get to, MPJ. Just hope he has a good shooting game. And then moving on to the last few games here. Brooklyn, Utah. Brooklyn coming off a back-to-back. I don't think anyone would sit, so they look solid. I have a good amount of interest in Brooklyn just because they're playing Utah, a team you love to attack. So love Kyrie there at 9-9. He had a very, very bad shooting game, 40%, 11 to 27, but still got you there 61 fantasy points. So he has been great recently, the past 3 games without KD. But once again, the price hasn't changed. Fantastic matchup. So I love Kyrie as a spend-up option. Claxton, he's been getting there. It's just, I don't know. He's very foul prone. I just don't trust it. 7-4 for Claxton just doesn't feel great, even though he's been productive recently. Ben Simmons priced up about right. Same thing with O'Neal, Seth, TJ. I really have just interest in probably Kyrie and Joe Harris, as I mentioned that last slate. Joe Harris minutes were good. He shot the ball 6 of 6. He was a decent point per minute guy, so don't mind him. He's scoring dependent at times, but that's about it. I don't think you need to get cute with any of the guards. It's really just going to be Kyrie for me and maybe Joe Harris. On the opposite side, if you want to pay, max price for Laurie, sure you can. He's had a good upside, especially the past 3. Don't think there's a need to do it. Rather pay for Clarkson here at 6-9. He looks like a little bit better of a play. Similar upside. But yeah, I think my favorite 2 would be Clarkson and Kessler. They both look fantastic here. Kessler at 5-7 has huge upside. I'm assuming he'll pick up more ownership. He wasn't really popular that last slate, which was surprising because he was coming off a 2020 game, 57 fantasy points. Now, his minutes aren't as secure as you'd like him to be, but yeah, he should be a pretty solid play there at 5,700. The rest of the team, you can take a shot on Sexton as a value play. I don't mind him. You really just need him to be decent when it comes to scoring or just getting the rebounds and assists because he's kind of limited to around 25-ish fantasy points. So I don't mind him as a value play there. But yeah, a lot of interest in Kessler and Clarkson right now. Moving on to Memphis and LA. Another one of those games that looks a great game environment. You just got to hope it stays close. So if you think it will, love Ja there at 9-6. Looks fantastic. Triple J, Desmond Dane, Steven Adams, Brooks. They're all more secondary plays out of that range. I prefer getting to Bane and Adams just because they seem a little bit safer. Both have very solid upside. Brooks' prices came down to 4.8, which is appealing, but once again, it's Dylan Brooks. You just can't feel great about that, especially with everyone there, back to playing. So it's really just those guys. If you want to take a very risky shot on a guy who's been playing well recently, you can do Asante, but right now it's just going to be Ja for me as a kind of the main standout. Lakers side, LeBron should be good to go. If you want to ride the hot streak, you can. I just think one of these games, they're either going to get blown out or he's just going to be shooting the ball terribly and he's not going to get you there. But yeah, I don't mind him in the spot. Rest of the team just kind of there. Thomas Bryant minutes have been coming down. They've been closing with Wenyen. So not a lot of interest for me in this team right now, besides LeBron and maybe Russ. And then moving on to OKC. Love the spot here for SGA. Utah and Sacramento are 2 teams that you really want to target. Utah, you usually want to target them with bigs, but the whole team targeting them is great. And the same thing with Sacramento. They're just a fast-paced team. Really want to target them. So I love SGA here. He's been playing not the best recently. Obviously 62 and 47 are decent, but the past 2 games, it's kind of been Giddey's team the past few games. So do think people are going to go to Giddey over SGA. Thus, I like SGA a lot. And then you add on the fact that they're playing Sacramento. Should be a fast-paced game. 2 young guards going head-to-head. So really, really, really like SGA in the spot here versus Sacramento. Giddey, decent. He's been playing great recently. If you want to ride the hot streak, one of those guys, you can definitely do that. I don't mind it. Jalen Williams and Dort, I do have some interest in them. Jalen Williams has actually been very good the past month in terms of his fantasy output, especially at 5'2". So good amount of interest in him, good amount of interest in SGA, a little bit of interest in Giddey and Dort, and that's really it. If Kendrick Williams starts again, you can go to him. He had 41 in 22 minutes. Don't expect that kind of output, but he's a decent point per minute guy, especially if he starts. So you could go to him as a decent value player at 4,400. And then moving on to Sacramento, big news is Sabonis. If he's in, I do have a good amount of interest in him at 10.5. The rest of the team just be more secondary GPP plays with interest in Herter and Malik Monk. Obviously, if he's out, the starters should play a ton of minutes. You get the starting lineup of Fox, Barnes, Herter, Murray, and they started Rashawn Holmes, who looked great, 31 minutes, 31 fantasy points. So that's kind of the big news there. Hopefully, we have an inkling of like understanding if he's going to be able to play. Yeah, he wasn't able to practice yesterday, so maybe it's looking like he's not going to be in. We'll just have to see. It kind of sucks because it's the last game. So if you want to be a shark, you build your lineup around the fact that he could be potentially out. But if he gets ruled in, then you're kind of screwed in terms of pivot plays. But yeah, that's kind of the route you had to go with tonight. It's huge news because if he's out, Fox becomes one of the best plays on the slate, 8,200. These value plays like a Herter, Murray, Monk, they all become great GPP plays. Even Trey Lyles, Holmes will be very popular. You can pivot to Me Too. So there's a lot to like from the Sacramento side. And obviously, the big news is Sabonis. So I'd suggest if you're going to be playing one lineup, if you don't like being risky, I'd say you'd assume he might be in or just take a stance already. But if you're playing multiple lineups, I think you do have to build at least a few of them around the fact that Sabonis might be out. So you want to take a shot on a few of these guys. As I mentioned, if he's out, obviously guys who are going to step up would be a Fox, would be a Herter, would be a Malik Monk, and then you can get to one like the value bigs, like Holmes would probably start again because he was solid in that last game. And then Me Too is like a pivot play. And I don't mind Trey Lyles as like another contrarian pivot play from those bigs. Decent price. The minutes didn't really go up even with Sabonis out, but we know if he's hitting shots, he does have a decent fantasy point ceiling. So yeah, good amount of interest in that last game. And that really does it for this slate breakdown. Right now, as I said, good amount of interest in SGA, Gordon, Bam, and Tyler. We'll see if injury news changes into that. Make sure to stay updated with me on Twitter for that. And I'll see you guys in the video or the next video, and hit that like button. Thank you guys. Peace.